The desert remembers what people forget. 27-year-old Marisol Quintero was found beneath a canyon ledge one July night in 1996, her car still humming, her life abruptly paused. The report said suicide. The silence said otherwise. Decades later, a misplaced envelope resurfaces, carrying a confession written in fear's trembling hand. Detective Elias Navarro reopens the file, chasing not fingerprints, but echoes, the way guilt reverberates through kindness, love, and lies. As he unravels the past, each truth he finds only deepens the ambiguity of mercy. In the end, the case becomes less about who killed Marisol than who learned to live with it. The first memory that returns is not the fall, not the desert night, not even the sirens swarming the canyon road like angry, red insects. It is a breath held too long, the way the lungs ache when you postpone the world. Someone says her name, Marisoland. The breath breaks, but the body does not. In that suspended second between word and answer, the death feels like an argument whispered in a chapel, intimate, private, and fundamentally unclear. Did she lean into the dark, or did it lean into her? There is no sound that proves anything. There is only the pause where a confession might have been. Her name was Marisol Quintero, 27, the daughter of a barber who kept a coffee can of tips beneath the sink, and a seamstress who hummed boleros when the thread knotted. A first-generation graduate student in social work at the university in Tucson, 2 classes from finishing. By day, she shelved books at the South Nogales branch. Her hair gathered with a tortoiseshell clip, her wrists ink-smeared from stamping due dates in a cadence that comforted her. Little metronome of order inside the soft chaos of other people's lives. In the evenings, she tutored adults learning English. She believed in ordinary kindness, the cumulative weight of small, unremarked choices. No one noticed when she began losing weight. Someone noticed when she stopped wearing the clip. The official report, insufficient, tells a story that mistakes stillness for clarity. A rock ledge above a runoff channel, a car parked at an odd angle, the door open. The engine tick-tick-ticking into silence as if it feared to wake anything at all. Her body discovered, just below, bruises that could be explained by impact, or by someone's hands, or by neither, depending on the courage of the reader. Desert wind lifting the hem of her skirt like a question it didn't want answered. The moon, indifferent as a witness afraid to testify. People said suicide because grief loves a straight line. She'd broken off an engagement that spring. Something about loyalty, overstretched, and trust frayed in ways embroidery cannot fix. She'd gotten quiet, they said, then quieter still. The library kept her hours on the schedule board a week after she failed to show, as though attendance were a spell that could be cast in absentia. The pastor in the parish where she lit candles for people, she never named said tragedy because tragedy appears to imply nobody's fault. The town, being a town, gathered rumor like dry sheets on a clothesline, quickly, with a ritual of wrist flicks and clothespins. Everything in its proper place. There were details that did not sit down properly in their chairs. The missing clip, the cuticle torn on her left thumb as though she'd worried it hard in the hours before. The car seat slid back farther than she habitually kept it. A bruise at the base of her scalp that might have been older or newer than the fall, depending on which shade of purple you favored. The way her keys turned up 2 days later in the pocket of a cardigan folded at the back of her closet, as if an earlier Marisol had put them away with care and the current one had forgotten herself. I say we because forgetting is communal. The desert forgets in daylight and then remembers at dusk, when the heat releases its held breath and brings the day's scents to the surface. Creosote, dust, something like citrus and rust. The investigation forgot to ask questions that had no ready folders. We forgot to keep her in the present tense. The summer moved forward, swallowing the chapter whole, because a page turned is not proof that the story makes sense. It is only proof that we have hands. When I dream of her, I do not dream of the fall. I dream of the way a library book carries the last reader's warmth, how the margin of a page can curl like a lip. I dream of the space her body made in the air and how that space filled with silence as soon as she left it. If death is a grammar, then Marisol's was a sentence without period or question mark. It just stops, and the line beneath it begins in the same breath. The file closed in 1996 with a rubber stamp and a sigh. Closure is a word we use when we are tired of holding the door. It is obscene how lightly a life can hinge on a piece of paper. The library, reshuffled and modernized, puts a set of outdated circulation cards in a donation box to be recycled as scrap. A volunteer insists on reviewing them for sentimental value. She is old enough to know that sentiment slips into the margins when official histories lose patience. At the bottom of the box, beneath a crumble of brittle index cards and a laminated poster about library fines, she finds a sealed envelope without a stamp. The librarian on duty, a man young enough to be charmed by the old woman's stubbornness, lets her open it at the desk. He wouldn't have, if she hadn't said please the way widows say please to the sea. The letter is dated July 15th, 1996. It is written in block capitals on the back of a library incident report form. The handwriting leans forward as if running out of time. I saw her at closing. The letter begins, Marisol with the man she said was a cousin. He was not a cousin. He wanted the keys, she cried in the staff room. I listened from the hall. I shouldn't have. I didn't tell, because it felt like I was made of glass. I didn't want to break. He said, if you don't come, I'll go to your father. She said, don't. They left by the back door, not the front. I think he took her to the old quarry road. I'm sorry, no signature, no name. Just a line drawn under sorry with a pen that faltered, pressed down, faltered again, until the paper nearly tore. Tucked behind the letter, a photocopy of a temporary library. Card application with half the fields incomplete and the address left blank. The name Lucio, last name smudged, possibly S or C or both, depending on the angle. A phone number with 3 digits crossed out and rewritten. Then crossed again an indecisive river on a dry map. The volunteer brings it to the new branch manager, who brings it to the municipal clerk, who dislikes responsibility and loves protocol. Protocol says, if you find an artifact. Protocol says, notify the police. The clerk hesitates 3 hours, then 3 more, arranging the letter in the center of his desk as though symmetry could steady it. After lunch, he carries it over in a manila folder, his face neutral in the way people practice neutrality when they have already judged themselves for waiting. Detective Elias Navarro receives the folder like a prayer misdirected. He has a face that looks like it hears you even when you are not speaking. His silence is fluent. He sits with the letter. He reads it once, then twice, then reads the back of the incident form where a childish drawing of a cat curls beneath a warning, do not remove. He traces the line beneath, sorry, with his thumbnail and feels, faintly, the tremor in the hand that made it. the human vibration that never fully disappears from paper. He thinks about how confessions try to leave the body in whatever way is available, through the throat or through the pen, and how often they end up in donation boxes. A forgotten witness. Not a person exactly, but a voice that didn't arrive in time. Somewhere, the author of the letter still holds their breath. Somewhere, the fear is thick as syrup. Elias does not imagine stern doors in his mind where others might. He imagines a hallway with a staff room at the end, fluorescent lights humming, a woman crying into her wrist, and someone listening, because listening is what we do when we cannot help. Should we dust it? The young officer asks, already spry with procedures and clean victory. Elias shakes his head. Maybe later, he says, and it sounds like, let the paper keep its own pulse a little while longer. He reads the date again. July 15th, 1996. He checks the old report. July 16th, 1996. He notes the back door. He notes the quiver around the word cousin. He writes Marisor's name on a fresh pad, as though writing could make her present. He thinks of glass. He thinks of the ways people apologize to the dead because they are afraid to apologize to the living. When he stands, he does not feel the thrill of progress. He feels a column of quiet rise in him, and inside it, something like grief that isn't his. He asks for the old evidence box. He asks for the interview tapes. He asks for access to the staff room, which is now a storage closet with a dent in the drywall where a metal cart once kissed too hard. He stands in that closet with the lights off and imagines the evaporated night. He listens. The building is a throat swallowing air. Through the vent there is a sound that might be a memory, but it does not resolve. He is learning again the lesson all detectives learn, and few can keep, that what we find is never what we seek. It is always the echo that remains when seeking fails. Elias's method has never been about the places where bodies were found, but the rooms where words were unspoken. He begins with absence because it is the most honest witness. He goes to the Quintero barbershop and waits his turn like a man with hair that grows. The mirror is a tired rectangle propped against an older sorrow. Mr. Quintero asks, "How much?" And Elias says, "Just enough to look like I'm trying." When the first snip falls, he asks something that has nothing to do with July 1996. When did she start humming instead of singing? The barber pauses, scissors open like a bird on a wire. After Senorita Diaz died, he says, then shakes his head at himself. No, earlier. When she started working evenings, he does not look at the detective. People will tell more truth when your eyes are busy. She never wanted to worry me. Did she succeed? Sometimes, the barber smiles a sliver. Sometimes she worried me by not worrying me. Elias makes note, not on paper but in the part of his chest where affinities collect like lint. He makes a second appointment he will not keep. At the church, he lights a candle without praying. He sits in the back pew and watches people negotiate with their own silences. The pastor recognizes him. Communities smell investigation like ozone before a storm. The pastor says, "We did what we could," and Elias listens for the word that tries to hide inside could. He hears tiredness and conviction and the subdued pride of a man who knows his job is to stand between hurt and despair with underpowered arms. What did she ask for? Elias asks. Mercy, the pastor says, then adds, for others. He leaves a small pause, a respectful path for the dead to walk through. She asked for less anger in the world, never for herself. People like that, Elias murmurs, are magnets. For what? For need. And need has a way of mistaking mercy for permission. The pastor's eyes flick away, then back. We're not trained for cross-examination here. I'm not cross-examining, Elias says softly. I'm learning her from the outside in. He listens to the pauses people put between their sentences. He watches the way the librarian who found the letter holds her elbows with her palms, warming herself without moving her hands. He watches the clerk's desk, which is organized to suggest an innocence it cannot purchase. He goes to the back door of the library and stands where the letter said they left. The hinge squeals. He does not write down squeals. He writes down the way the alley narrows into secrecy, and the way the trash bins stand like blocked confessions. He requests the interview tapes from 1996 and plays them alone, in a room with the blinds half closed to put a stripe across the world. The voices are young with certainty. He is careful not to resent them for that. He hears a girlfriend of the ex-fiancé stiffened around his name. Hears the ex-fiancé himself tidy up his anger like a room before company arrives. He hears a co-worker laugh too quickly when asked if Marisol had enemies. The tape clicks. The tape sighs. He rewinds not to catch facts but to catch a thud that might be someone bumping the table. A long exhale. A question repeated, slightly altered, to make it easier to answer. He catalogues the cautions people took with themselves. The human project is mostly managing what we can bear to know. Who is Lucio? The young officer asks him later, not unkindly, eager for a noun to chase. Maybe someone who wanted to be a noun, Elias says. Names are a shelter. Sometimes they're a trap. He meets with Marisol's mother in the kitchen that still smells of starch. He asks, what did she keep that others threw away? The mother opens a drawer full of elastic bands wound into a ball the size of a small heart. Everything, she says, and then covers her mouth for taking the word from someone else's sentence. Did your daughter believe she could fix people? She believed people weren't broken. He writes it down because it changes the angle of all the other sentences in the staff closet. He finds the dent in the wall again and rests his thumb in it. He imagines a cart hitting it, yes, but he also imagines a head. He imagines how pain stored in walls leaches into paint like nicotine. He makes no call to forensics. He does not swab, dust, or measure beyond an absent-minded calculation done with his forearm. He thinks about the letter. I shouldn't have listened. He thinks about the voice that wrote it. A person who feared their own transparency. He wonders whether fear made them precise or false. He gives fear the benefit of the doubt. Fear knows too much about accuracy. He asks the form of questions that do not sound like questions. When did you stop humming? He asks a co-worker who used to cover Marisol's lunch breaks. The co-worker blinks as if he has reached into her chest and brushed something behind her sternum. When I had my second child, she says. Then, after a beat, when I realized who I marry is not who I fell in love with. She stares at the detective's shoes. We changed the locks, she says, though he did not ask. On the back door, on all the doors. It is not a clue. It is a portrait of fear learning to dress itself. He adds it to the gallery in his mind. He does eventually ask one practical question. Why does the letter say cousin? The librarian shrugs, hands splayed, palms empty. Because it's an old lie, she offers, and Elias almost smiles. A cousin is permission to stand close without explanation. A cousin is a bridge no one tests for weight. He writes cousin next to permission and draws a line between them the way boys draw roads between towns. At night he drives the old quarry road. Windows open, desert air entering like a cool admonition. The stones do not tell him anything. The stars do not align into names. He turns the engine off and listens to a silence that has lost track of which parts of itself are memory. He thinks of the barber's scissors, open on a pause. He thinks of the mother's rubber bands, a soft knot of second chances. He thinks of his own failures, the cases that ended with handcuffs and headlines and no one sleeping better. He has come to believe that guilt is not a verdict but a neighborhood, a place we visit and leave and return to in cycles, bringing pies to our worst selves. He does not look for Lucio so much as he prepares to meet the shape of a man who is used to being reshaped by other people's needs. He will be charming, or he will be injured, or he will be both, which is more often the truth than anyone likes to admit. Elias's notes fill with verbs: hesitated, deflected, soothed, claimed. He is not counting fingerprints. He is counting the ways people reach for each other and the bruises their fingers make without meaning to, or meaning to. Which is worse only sometimes. When he returns the letter to its folder, he does so as one returns a tender object to a drawer, not because it is fragile, but because the person who needs it might not be ready yet. He will ask for records. He will map relationships that shift under pressure. He will listen for apologies that never find their noun. He will stand, as he always does, in the long hallway between what happened and what people can bear to say, and wait for the sound a door makes when someone decides, at last, to let it open a little. Elias learned long ago that suspicion is less about deceit than proximity. The closer to hearts stand, the more their shadows overlap until even truth looks borrowed. He begins with the fiancé, Daniel Corral, who still lives in Tucson and manages a car parts store with the bland serenity of someone rebuilt from denial. They meet at a diner off I-19, where the jukebox hasn't worked since the Clinton years and the waitress calls everyone darling. Daniel's hands never rest. They flick at his coffee, at the napkin, at the invisible dust of years gone. I loved her, he says first, unprovoked, which is usually the second thing guilty men say. Elias nods, not in agreement, but in permission. You were engaged. For 6 months. She called it off. Said she needed to feel whole before promising anything. He swallows. She didn't sound whole when she said it. Elias studies him, not the words, but the rhythm between them. Regret comes in uneven beats. Did she tell you why? Daniel shrugs. She said I made her small. I thought I was making her safe. The pause after the word safe is a small collapse, a tired house folding into itself. Did you see her that week? Twice, once at the grocery store. Once he hesitates, lips pressing into an old wound. Once outside the library. She was waiting for someone. A man in a beige jacket. I thought it was her cousin. The cousin, Elias lets the word travel, soft but heavy. Daniel nods quickly, too quickly. Yeah, him. Did you speak? I almost did. Then I didn't. It's the kind of answer Elias trusts. The almost always tells more truth than the act. Later, in the library's quiet corners, Elias meets Rosa Marizel's co-worker, her friend, her almost confessor. Rosa's hair is silver now, her eyes like cracked glass. She speaks softly, not from fear but fatigue. She was in love, but not with Daniel, Rosa says. He was the scaffolding, not the house. Then with whom? Asterisk, Rosa shakes her head. Love doesn't always name itself. It just rearranges the furniture. She glances toward the back door, where the light fades early. I saw her once, with a man who looked like trouble only to himself. I asked who he was. She said, a reminder. Elias waits, but she will not elaborate. Instead, she wipes her palms against her skirt, leaving crescent moons of moisture. I used to think people died from cruelty, she murmurs. Now, I think it's confusion that kills us.
In the evenings, Elias reviews the tapes again. Daniel's tone, Rosa's pauses, the barber's sigh, the mother's clasped hands, all share a single undercurrent, shame that doesn't belong entirely to them. He realizes the investigation has turned communal, the town itself a suspect, complicit through silence. At night he writes in his notebook, love disguises itself as rescue, rescue as control, control as devotion. The chain is unbroken, and somewhere along it Marisol slipped. The forgotten letter leads Elias to a maintenance log from 1996, hidden in the city archives, one of those carbon-copied books that smell of mildew and accidental truth. On July 16, an entry records, security light at back lot malfunctioning. Lucio Salinas signed for parts. A name, finally unblurred. Lucio Salinas had been a temporary contractor, hired for repairs at the library and dismissed quietly after inappropriate behavior with staff. No charges filed, no memos circulated. The silence of institutions is the most sophisticated kind. Elias tracks him down near Phoenix, a man now living with a new wife, 2 stepchildren, and a limp he doesn't explain. They speak on the porch. Lucio's smile is courteous, but his eyes anticipate accusation. I heard she died, he says before Elias even mentions Marisol. Long time ago. Did you know her well? Lucio exhales through his nose, a sound between laughter and confession. She wanted to help me, thought I was better than I was. She was wrong. Did you meet her the night she died? The man's mouth trembles, a flicker, small but treacherous. I told her to come. I was drunk, said things. She came anyway. And she wanted me to tell the truth about something, about the books, about the money the branch manager took from fines. I didn't. I couldn't. He looks out over the yard where a sprinkler ticks like a metronome. She said people deserve honesty. I said people deserve peace. She cried. Then I left her at the quarry. She said she'd follow later. I drove away. When I heard she was dead, I thought maybe I killed her by leaving. It's not confession but penance. Elias recognizes the difference. Did you push her? Lucio looks up sharply. No, God no, but I thought about it once. That's enough, isn't it? Elias doesn't answer. He feels the desert closing around them, heat and dusk sealing the conversation like wax. Back in Tucson, the old branch manager, now retired, wheelchair-bound, admits he falsified reports to protect the library's funding. Marisol wanted to report it. She said truth builds trust. I said truth kills budgets. And Lucio. An easy scapegoat. He had a record for fights, nothing big. I thought it was over. Elias leaves the house with the brittle realization that guilt has no expiration date. Everyone protected something. Reputation, order, themselves. The truth was a communal inconvenience. In the hotel mirror, Elias catches his own reflection and wonders what he's protecting. He's long divorced, estranged from a daughter who once said, "You collect tragedies like hobbies." Maybe she was right. Maybe he loves the broken because they mirror his outline. The case unfolds not like a flower but a bruise, spreading, deepening, but never clean. The final thread unravels quietly. Rosa, the steadfast friend, the grieving witness, calls Elias one morning. Her voice is brittle, almost serene. "You should come," she says, Before I forget again. In her small apartment, dust drifts through late light. On the table lies a photograph. Marisol and Rosa, arms around each other, a third shadow barely visible behind them, Lucio smiling unaware. She loved him, Rosa says, but he loved me. The words land like old glass cracking. You wrote the letter, Elias says softly. Rosa nods. I thought I was protecting her. She was going to leave town, report the theft, start over, but she would have exposed me too. I took money once when my son was sick. She forgave me, said no one would ever know. Then she decided to tell the truth anyway. Rosa's eyes meet his, full of wet defiance. I went after her that night. I begged her not to go to the police. She said she had to. We argued. She slipped. I didn't pull her. I didn't push her either. Maybe both. Elias feels the silence expand, until even breathing feels intrusive. Why confess now? Because forgetting worked too well. I wake up some days and she's already forgiven me again. He could arrest her. The statute of limitations for manslaughter might still bend under pressure, but something in him, older, wearier, refuses. The truth, once spoken, feels less like justice and more like blasphemy. As he leaves, Rosa calls out, "Tell them it was an accident." He doesn't answer. In the parking lot, he watches the desert sun swallow her apartment in gold and dust. The innocence he'd trusted was never real, only a shape guilt wore to survive. The report Elias files is brief, almost sterile. No new evidence sufficient to prosecute. Death remains undetermined. It's the most honest lie he's ever written. He drives to the old quarry one last time. The wind hums against the rocks, carrying faint echoes of voices that never quite fade. He imagines Marisol standing at the edge, torn between conscience and love, and Rosa behind her, torn between fear and loyalty. Two women bound by mercy, undone by it. He closes his eyes. In that darkness, he hears his daughter's voice again. You collect tragedies like hobbies. Maybe that's what redemption is. Learning to leave certain doors closed because opening them only releases more sorrow into the world. He lights a candle at the church, unlabeled, anonymous. The flame trembles, fragile but upright. Behind him, the pastor whispers, "For whom?" Elias replies, "For the living." Outside, the night settles without verdict. The stars blink, patient and impartial. In the hush between wind gusts, he swears he hears Marisol's voice, soft, forgiving, unfinished. It says nothing that can be written, only something that can be felt. That truth is not salvation, only exposure. That mercy sometimes looks like silence. He leaves the candle burning. Whether it's for her or for himself, he cannot say.